Okay, we left off Monday on this slide, I believe, some comparisons between viruses and living cells. And the biggest thing that you need to know from this slide is the reasons why viruses are not considered living. So they don't grow and develop, they don't obtain and use energy, they don't respond to the environment, and they don't change over time. And this was a picture of a bacteriophage, which is a virus that infects bacteria. And we can start to see some of the structures of a virus. So one of the things you'll need to know is something called a capsid, which is sort of like the cell wall. It encloses the virus and protects the nucleic acid inside. It's composed of protein. And then inside we have the nucleic acid, the DNA or the RNA. Most of the time it's going to be RNA. So the protein coat on the outside often has these little spiky things coming off the end of it, especially the coronavirus has a lot of these. These things are called glycoproteins, and they serve a purpose to sort of sense and detect, so the virus knows what to do, where to go, that sort of thing. It doesn't have a brain, but these glycoproteins give it direction in the sense that it knows to invade a host cell versus to invade a piece of wood, for example, that's dead. So here's a bacteriophage again. We've got the capsid protein coat. Inside we have either DNA or RNA. And what we can do here is we can inject the genetic material into the host cell. Um, Here's a different picture of a virus. These glycoproteins also serve as surface markers to identify the surface like we talked about. And this type of virus here, this shape would be more like the COVID virus, HIV, or flu. And so an important idea is that we can vaccinate against viruses. We can train our immune systems to detect these and destroy them before we're infected. And the problem is that viruses, come in different strains. So it depends on with flu, we might have a different vaccine every season depending on the new strain. HIV, we don't really have a vaccine for that one. As you guys know, there is a vaccine now available for COVID. So what's the process? How do viruses do their thing? They can't make copies of themselves without a host cell. And so they trick this host cell into doing the work that has the cellular machinery to reproduce. And the steps involve attaching. So the capsid binds to the receptor proteins on the surface of the host cell, tricking the host cell into thinking that it's not a foreign invader. Then the virus injects its genetic material into the host cell. The viral genes are expressed and run through the ribosomes of the host cell, which are the protein factories, and the genes of the virus are then incorporated into the host cell genes. And really what's happening here is the host cell is replicating the virus, just like the host cell might replicate itself, but now the viral genes are into the host genome. And this happens a lot. It reproduces the virus again and again and again until eventually the host cell bursts, releasing hundreds of newly formed viruses to infect surrounding cells. So here's a diagram of this. This is a bacteriophage which injects its genetic material. Its genetic material, the sequence of DNA, is then sort of copy and pasted into the bacterial genome here. And the bacterial genome then, before replication, is going to be replicated. And so we reproduce the viral DNA before the bacteria does binary fission, and you can see that each of the daughter cells has a copy of the viral DNA. And the viral DNA we call a prophage, which then is the instructions for what the cell does, and these instructions say make viruses. And so this side of the cycle represents what's called the lysogenic, or the sort of dormant phase of a virus. So you can have a virus in your body and not know it, and you might not have symptoms for many years, and then you might enter the lytic cycle, where for some reason the genes are activated and the virus is reproduced, and then ultimately the host cell explodes, releasing more viruses. A good example of this would be the herpes simplex virus, a virus that causes cold sores. And so you can have once you have the virus, you have it for life. And you're in this lysogenic cycle for the most part, where your cells have a bit of this viral genetic material in them. And occasionally you might enter the lytic cycle, where the that viral DNA is turned on, and you're now producing the virus in your own cells to produce the expression of that, which would be a cold sore that would maybe happen on your lip. And so you probably know somebody who gets cold sores, and some people get them a lot, some people get them rarely. Um, and there's environmental factors that can sort of trigger an entrance to this lytic cycle, which would be stress, or excessive exposure to UV light. Those sorts of things can trigger this. So viruses can cause disease, and even disease in bacteria. So the common cold, as we talked about, is caused by viruses, which is why antibiotics won't do anything. Hepatitis, herpes, mononucleosis, warts, chickenpox, polio, the flu, AIDS. AIDS is an important one. AIDS is the disease caused by the HIV virus. And so this was a sexually transmitted disease that ultimately can be deadly if you acquire it. Because the HIV, once it turns into the disease, autoimmune deficiency syndrome, it suppresses your immune system, and then simple things like the cold can become deadly. So our immune system is so important. Immunology is quite a world of study. So how do you protect yourself against these disease-causing agents? Antivirals can treat viral disease. Antibiotics treat bacterial disease. Probably the most important thing for both of these is vaccination, because your immune system is far superior than any drugs we can ever produce. And antivirals can only be used to treat certain viral infections. They don't even kill the virus. They can, maybe reduce the symptoms. So if you have a cold sore, you can buy something to make the cold sore go away, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the herpes virus in your body. So vaccination is very important, can be used to prevent infectious disease. One of the most important vaccines for young people to get in today's world is the HPV vaccine. So the human papillomavirus is a virus that it's an STD, which can ultimately lead to a certain type of cervical cancer in females. And it's totally preventable now. They didn't have this when I was your age, but you can be vaccinated for HPV, which is a pretty awesome thing, ultimately leading to less cancer, which can ultimately be deadly. So getting this vaccine is a really good idea. If you haven't ever had it, you should probably get it. And once you have that HPV virus, it's a lifelong thing, sort of like the herpes virus as well. And I think I will stop here. We've gone through the basic stuff, so hopefully this will help you on the quiz that you're about to take. Make sure you've done the CK12 reading for this week, and I'll answer this final question. Do antiviral drugs kill the virus? The answer is no. They reduce the symptoms. All right, guys, have a great weekend.